Hello again. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good wherever you are in the world and whatever time you are watching this. Right now, it is late at night and it's past actually the time for good bourbon in Budapest. So thank you very much for postponing that. Oh, it's a stretch goal. Very nice.
It's a mug, and I have to confess, there's some bourbon in this mug.
It's what is it? 8:30 there or something like that already?
It's 9:21.
Oh, nine. Oh, yeah. I think that's fine. So we didn't miss happy hour entirely. I'm still looking forward to lunch here in California. But this is Chris from CXD Now, sponsored by IBM Commerce and the IBM Journey Designer team. Thank you very much again, Tom Illmensee from Prezi, for joining us. We've just talked a little bit about some of his origin story and talked about the lessons from empathy and uncertainty. But I want to get to more practical stuff now relative to your work and some of the stuff you've learned while actually working at Prezi and building up this great team you have that has built truly an amazing product. I mean, I haven't met anyone that isn't blown away by it. It really does think for deep customer empathy, and it's based on those principles. And it lets us do amazing things. It makes everyone filled with joy. Not only the people who use the product to create great stories, but also the people who hear those stories. So it really does embrace those principles. And that's why I'm really glad to have you as really our first sort of everyday practitioner to join the show. But let me get to some specific stuff here, because in our past shows, what we've talked about is the problems with cross-functional collaboration and how do we get all these people kind of working together. And that seemingly is still the biggest challenge. And I just wanted to get some of your insights on how you've approached it and, you know, what you found might work.
Yeah. Okay. How much time do we have? Because I could talk about this.
Well, let's start with one or two, and then, you know, I'll interrupt you here and there maybe and get you on another one or whatever. But we're going to try to keep it about 10, 12 minutes for the whole segment.
Okay. Cool. I'm not going to keep time, Chris, so I'm going to rely on you to signal.
We'll do that for you. No problem.
Stop. I had an amazing epiphany at IDEO in Chicago a couple of years ago. And I was there at my first Balance Team meetup. And if you don't know the Balance Team, strongly recommend you take a look at balanceteam.org. And it's almost like a tribe of people who gather together to advocate for and celebrate and practice cross-functional teamwork. And sometimes like at the extremes, like putting together like an attorney, a designer, and an engineer, have them sit together and work together to solve a problem, like super cool stuff like that. And it was at the Balance Team conference a couple of years ago that I realized I had found like my spiritual home. Like these were my people. Like this is the way I wanted to work. Not in a cubicle. I've done that before, but the best work happens around a kind of an open table with people who aren't really like you or don't have your skills necessarily, where you can sort of jam together. It's like in a way, it's kind of like a rock band, like you've got your drummer and your bass player and your keyboard player, and they all sort of come together and put their parts together in a magical way. And one of the things I learned at the Balance Team was this idea that and I got this from a conversation between, if I remember correctly, it was between Jared Spool and Jeff Patton. And the essence of it was that the experience that we want to create is a reflection of the product that we make for people, or the service we present to people. That service or product is a reflection of the process that we use to make it. And the process is a reflection of the culture of how we interact with each other and treat each other and where we sit and the tools we use and how we talk. And then the culture is a reflection of the vision, the story, the big why. We're all here. And that if you really want to have a profoundly great experience in your company, you have to go upstream a bit and work in the culture part and the process part. You can't just like hammer on the product and expect awesomeness. And if the vision's weak, you're in trouble. How that translates to Prezi is and cross-functional teams, that's really a cultural impulse. What we did let me explain where we are today. We're in sort of a transitional period where the language we use now with designers and researchers is that these are communities of practice, which is super important. These are not departments. These are not teams. These are two communities, and everyone's welcome into it.
Let me interrupt. So you don't have a design team or a design department.
We're dissolving that notion and embracing more of this. Right now, it's more like language about a community. And that's so important because we want an engineer and a support specialist and sales executive to feel like they can be a part of the design culture. It's not, a different department that they're not in. It's almost like the org chart doesn't matter. And it's kind of a bit risky and a bit daring sometimes because we need to have that sort of sense of belonging to a department or a team, our approach to that is it's a design community and we take care of each other, and it's a researcher community and we take care of each other. And those two communities are connected powerfully. So here's how it works practically. When I got to Prezi, there was a time where Prezi was sort of in a not an identity crisis, but an awareness that we had sort of moved on from being a startup and have shifted into this kind of like we're in the growth stage. We're becoming bigger. We're 230 people.
Wow.
And there's about 60 in San Francisco, and everyone else is in Budapest. I mean, it's bigger than a startup. So, but there was still this notion that there needed to be sort of a design department and a research department, and it worked for a while for the company we were then. But what we needed more was to kind of combine our talents in some new ways so we could innovate faster, so we could ship things a bit more boldly. And to do that, we needed to basically, the first thing we did was just partner up. So the invitation to the designer and to the researcher was, who do you work with most often? Go sit with that person most of the time. And to do that, we actually had to move a bookcase, because there was a bookcase kind of dividing the room for a while. We moved the bookcase out of the way. That was the first little tiny step. And then the second step was to bring in some power tools and have people take apart their own furniture and put it back together in a way that made sense to them ergonomically. Like, oh yeah, now we can sit together and we can see each other. Awesome. And then the next invitation was, why are you sitting here? Go sit with your product manager. Go sit with your engineer. And off they went. And the notion of this cross-functional team just started to take hold. It became the normal thing. We come together as a community when we need inspiration and support and critique and professional development, but we spend most of our time with our cross-functional teams because that's where we're actually delivering what we hope is great value to our customers. And that's really been the big breakthrough here, is letting go of that sort of departmentally thinking and embracing cross-functionalism, I guess you could say, but also maintaining a very deliberate community of practice.
I like that a lot. But one of the challenges, of course, is that people don't always get along. So what do you do about that interpersonal conflict when, particularly if they're not part of the same tribes or communities and they're coming together?
Well, the first thing I do is say yes to it. I mean, come on, like, chemistry is not always awesome, right? I mean, even Mick Jagger and Keith Richards had chemistry. Well, That's literally they had chemistry problems, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's normal. I mean, sometimes it just doesn't. There's the harmony's just not there. Now, some amount of creative conflict is awesome, and so I typically coach pairs who haven't found their groove to stay in it a little bit longer, to kind of stretch out of their comfort zone, to pay attention to the discomfort they're in, and to just learn from it and keep working at it. But if it's really just not working, and sometimes it doesn't, it's okay. It's okay. We just solved that problem. It's just another design problem to solve. What are the issues? What are the friction points? And what's the wide variety of ways we could solve this problem together? And I have to admit, as a director here, like a new director here, I was a little worried about how that would pan out. But man, I mean, the team here, they're just incredible. They totally rise to the challenge. They're super empathetic to each other, thoughtful, and we find a way to do it. And so we've switched some partners, and it's kind of awesome.
That's cool.
In fact, some of my favorite moments are to see how people react to that and then move on with their work. It's super cool.
So that really gets to this heart of the matter, actually, to the hiring as well. We've got to hire smart in the beginning for that right sort of attitude, it sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah. So we've just got, we're actually kind of over time already for this segment, but I've got one more question I really want to get to, if we can just get a 2-minute answer or less on this, because, part of the challenge that a lot of my friends in this work have is convincing leadership to do the sorts of things that you've done. It takes an act of God to restructure or move desks or whatever. And certainly big companies aren't as nimble with that. But what did you have to do to convince leadership, to take this path to like embrace this idea of the balanced team and this sort of cross-functional stuff and ultimately CX broadly? Okay.
So I have one advantage and one thing anybody can use. The advantage I have at Prezi is founders who are crazy experimenters and up for anything pretty much, and who kind of encourage that, try it out, see how it works kind of behavior.
Cool.
So I'm super fortunate of that. The other bit though, any change is hard. Let's be clear. I mean, we're wired to resist change, even if it's good change. That's why, you can't stay on a diet. It's good for you, but you can't stick to it. It's just hard to change your behavior. So the answer to that one is to borrow liberally from this idea of Kaizen. And that's this sort of Japanese, it's a Japanese word, but an American guy, Deming, kind of helped develop it and used it at Toyota and other places. It's just small improvement. Look for something small that you can change, and those little changes add up to big impact over time. So like moving the bookcase is a Kaizen type thing. It's so simple. Like no one noticed. I didn't have to fill out a form. I just moved the bookcase. And then having people sit together. I don't need permission. Just do it. Now we hit a limit though when we sent everybody out of the design floor and into the cross-functional areas, because then we had to get some architects involved to kind of reconfigure the spaces. But at that point, we had so much momentum. It wasn't like, no, put them back in their cubicles. It wasn't like that at all. It was kind of like, ooh, we need to help. All right, there's movement here. People want to work this way. How can we support it? So that's my advice, is small things.
That's awesome. Yeah, really practical advice and so important, I think, to bringing this more holistic approach that customer experience design requires. So we're now going to be moving into a next segment to get a little more practical here. So check out segment 3 here in a minute. This is Chris Heuer with CXT Now, and I'm here today with the Director of UX at Prezi, Tom Illmensee. And again, big thanks to our sponsors, IBM Commerce and the IBM Journey Designer team. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back.